Hey guys, Andy again, spoken label, back in the house on a Sunday evening. Yeah, it's been a busy day today. It's been a good day, so that's always good to good busy days. We're over to a part of the world. I've got a friend. I used to know a friend that used to live in this area, so it's always nice to catch up, speak to people that live in areas that I used to have friends that lived in. So we're over to California today, and I want to put a shout out first of all over to Sonia Dalton, who we'll be speaking to separately over this podcast later on. But she referred over to me out of the blue, this very, very talented writer we've got with us today, Rich Rubin. And Rich has bought a book out at the back end of 2023 called The Day Before It Rained. And I absolutely love this. It's one of these sort of books that got me within the first 10 pages, and that's rare for me. So thank you for agreeing to do this podcast today, Rich. So
Well, thank you for having me.
okay, mate. Give us the introduction to yourself first of all, then, because we've got a lot to cover ground here. Because what I found interesting about your bio, Rich, was before we even start on this today, was you've jumped around several genres as a writer, and I want to learn about why you've done the journey you've done. It's obviously you've gone full circle here, so tell us about first of all, then, because you've lived in a few parts in America as well, haven't you? As well.
Yes. As far as the many different genres of writing, I was always concentrating on fiction and playwriting. I have a fairly extensive background in theater also.
Mm.
Um, and a very good friend of mine named Heather was the first person I ever knew who actually did travel journalism.
Mm.
And there's a story that takes place on the Yorkshire moors dedicated to her.
I saw that. I
And
saw that. That's not that far away from where I live, that isn't, right?
oh, really?
Yeah, where about
And
my wife actually grew up near there, she did. She lives in Yorkshire. So is that her neck of the woods?
yeah, so in my youthful snobbery, I was like, well, that's great for you, Heather, but that's not the real writing I want to do. Then my 30s came around, and in my mid 30s, I said, okay, look, you either find a way to make your writing work and earn your living from it, or you just give up and go sell insurance or something. So I said, Heather's done so well at this. Let me give it a try. And the first two stories I sent out got accepted by fairly major publications. I could then take those and propose things to other publications. And within 3 or 4 years, I was completely earning a living at it. And it was the best job, as I like to say, literally in the world. Um, and obviously provided some background for many of the stories you see in the collection. And I did it for 30 years. And
Wow.
then two things started happening. Online blogs became bigger, and it was more and more difficult to actually earn a living doing it. And well, I should say three things happened. Number two was the people I was dealing with just kind of freaked me out with how little they knew. Like, I'll never forget, I proposed a story about Morocco to the travel editor of a publication. And she said, Morocco, now that's near France, right?
Oh, blimey.
And then
I'm just to take my glasses
when
off.
I,
People are wondering, yeah, I'm banging my head against my hand against my head at the moment.
then I proposed a
Wow.
story about Rome to this young editor. And she said, oh, Rome, is there good shopping there? And I said, I think it's time to give this up. And it wears on you. It's a lot of work, and the travel is hard. And I'm not as young as I used to be. So finally I said, I'm going to retire. So I retired, And then I'm going through things and I find all these short stories that cover literally decades of my life. And I said, well, I can just let them sit in a drawer. And when I croak, my brothers will throw them away. Or I can try and do something with them. And I thought the latter was a much better choice. So that's how this collection came about.
Yeah, and it's interesting this because the book itself, people are wondering, there's what is it, something like about 30 years worth of material in this book, isn't there? Or
Or
selections of,
even more. I think
yeah.
some of them are from the 70s or 80s.
Wow. Yeah, I know your agent obviously told me about some of these stories are actually done on a typewriter, weren't they, as well? And I was like, and
Yes.
I was thinking, good God, because I'm 52. I can remember doing when I was 11 or 12 my very first stories in a typewriter, and it was just be crazy trying to type them all up now. So that alone, it must have been like the archive, and this must have been a nightmare for you, really.
It was a total nightmare because I'd scan them into my computer as a PDF, which I then have to convert to a Word
Oh
document,
no.
which then put 14,000 errors into it.
Yes. Oh yes.
You know,
Yes.
luckily for me, my friend Lucy is a proofreader by trade. So she helped out immensely with this.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you, Lucy, for helping Rich out with this because
Yes.
I think you were a lot for that, mate. Straight away with it. Now, obviously, before we go into the structure of the book itself, and I want to learn about the choices, really, how you picked out a lot of the pieces for this book. Where did the title come from, first of all, The Day Before It Rained?
The title is the name of one of the stories,
Hmm.
and it's one of my favorites in the book. It's about a guy who's in Provincetown, Massachusetts, um, long known as LGBTQ seaside resort. And he's thinking about this relationship of his back in New York. And as so often happens in Provincetown, he goes out to the beach and it starts raining. So he's thinking about this encounter or lack thereof with his so-called lover the day before, which is the day before it rained, and trying to move forward from a relationship that's obviously not working out. And to me, it was kind of symbolic of the whole book. How do we finally acknowledge when something is or isn't working? And having made that uh, determination, how do we move forward? The book, in so many ways, is about moving forward.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's a lot in this book, and I agree with you completely. That it's the movement about the choices we make looking back at life than how we move forward. Yeah, that's what I really liked about this book because people look at it. There's a lot of little short, mostly quite short stories in this, very short stories, but you cram a lot of detail in it. And it shows in your travel writing how you've done that basically. That's why. So, did you find when you were looking back during the selection period on this book, 'cause obviously, like, there must have been some choices you have to make in it because, like, there's some stories in the typewriter. You must have really had to update some of these stories to get them to fit into your book. Or did you just leave them the way they were, as snapshots at the time?
I did a little bit of each. If I thought there was nothing in the story that was really tied to the age that it was written, I went ahead and updated them and just changed things like uh, making things happen on a cell phone instead of a landline, that kind of thing. There are some of them that I really feel are tied to the age. And I left them often with a little note introducing them. Like there's a story called Harry and the Second Stonewall, which is about this rather closeted guy who is sitting in a gay bar in New York watching the beginnings of a march by a group called Queer Nation. Well, Queer Nation only lasted a few years, and it was early 90s. And I think much of not only the existence of that group, but the kinds of issues they were dealing with and the kind of thoughts Harry had about it were very tied to the age.
Yeah,
So I
understand.
left that one set in the 90s when it was written. There are others where that kind of thing wasn't there. And if I had to make a few little updates, I went ahead and did it.
Yeah, no, of course. Get it completely. Without giving too much away in the book, I want people to really read it. But when you were getting together some of the older pieces, was there any stories that surprised you when you're looking back at it, thinking, wow, I don't remember writing this?
There was none that I literally remembered not writing, but there were some that were like, oh God, this one needs some work before I dare show it to the public. And on
Yeah.
the other hand, there was first the feeling of, how am I going to respond to the story, which honestly I haven't even read in years. And then there would be a feeling of like, wow, this is really good. I really still like this. There were some, of course, that didn't even make it into the collection.
Yeah, of course. Of course, yeah. I think it's nature of the beast that when you're doing, when you've got a fairly lengthy archive, is trying to get the stories to fit within the theme of what you want this book to be. And
Right.
we'll come on to that obviously in future books that later on the podcast, certainly. But I want to talk about the various subheadings in the books, if you don't mind, and
Sure.
why you did it this way. Because people look, there's one, two, a number of subheadings here. So like we've got like portraits of time. What made you want to do that as a subheading to put some stories into it?
There were all of these pieces I had written that in many ways were not your traditional short story, that were just a little quirky portrait of somebody. And Portraits in Time is a gathering of those together.
I thought so.
Um,
I thought so. That's me instinct what that one was. I thought that was the one where you were looking back at it, and I wondered, was this where some of the really older pieces were? So yeah, that makes sense.
like there's one piece in there called Katinka,
Hmm.
which was written years ago. I think on a printed out page, it's like maybe one page long, maybe one and a half. And that story came about because it's the second story in the book. It came about because I was sitting in a cinema watching the credits roll by at the end of the film,
Oh, wow. Yeah, I
and
can see
one
it.
of the third assistant prop people or something was named Katinka something. And I thought, now, what kind of person would have a name Katinka? I've never heard that name. And created this quirky little portrait that, as I say, is reading out loud is about 2 minutes. And there were so many of those that I thought, let's group these all together in a section.
Yeah, you've got that with the follow-up piece that comes straight after it, Mum, which I really liked Mum because it made me think of my mum and dad really. Because my dad used to watch a lot of old wrestling in England back in the 60s and
Um,
70s. And I thought, I could imagine my mum actually doing that because we there's myths in England of little old ladies going to wrestling shows and getting that wound up by the main villains. They get the handbag out with a brick in it and start smacking the villain on the head with the handbag.
wow, and here I thought it was a story that nobody could possibly be like that in real life.
Yeah, it's like we took them in northwest of England, mate, in the 60s and 70s. It was legendary. They used to get that
Yeah.
rough. So yeah. No, it makes it I got that one straight away with it. Obviously, foreign strands, which comes up after that. That's where I think it's a bit different, that one, because obviously like there's more this is more like I felt this is more like you and your traveling mode, really, this one.
Yes, definitely. Um, Not all stories that are set abroad are in that section, but the majority of them are. And it was very much a byproduct of my travel writing. I can't say that anything described in those stories was, or let's say the main point of the story was anything I actually experienced.
Hmm.
Uh, I may have been in that location, like with Land's End, which I believe is in that section.
Yeah.
Yes, I rode a bus around the Cornwall coast, but I never had a crazy bus driver who drove the bus off the cliff.
Yeah. Oh God.
So it um, was a way of sort of paying tribute to the richness of experience that the travel writing afforded me.
Yes, of course. No, I can understand completely that. And that's why I felt this was the homage in the book to what your life
Yes.
was before the stories straight away. And I thought, yeah, really, I swear. I want all the bits in this are really good, very good sections. But that was probably my favourite. That was, to be honest. I might be honest with you. So, but obviously, then we had people with it. Oh, I'm going to make sure I read this right. Actually, one second. People with people, and this felt more like a character's side of it more to me. And obviously, that's
Yes.
where I think that's why was this one the more difficult one to select, was it? Because obviously, I felt like a lot of this was about people you knew this one, even though they weren't necessarily true.
Yeah, this one's the one focused on relationships. So in a way, it was the most, I wouldn't say torturous, but it required some looking at myself and looking at some of these relationships. Obviously, some of the stories were based on at least some aspect of a relationship I had been in.
Yeah, I got that on the Five Love Story in this one, but with featuring Aaron, and this one obviously like. As we can see, you've got your cat sat in the background now, and it kind of made me think. Then I thought, oh, this might be quite close to the truth. This was a story.
Five Loves was my little bit of revenge.
Yeah. So, yeah, I was wondering where it was, and then I saw your cat sitting on the couch, and I thought, oh, hang on, this has got to be a story, this one. So, yeah, no, great stuff, mate, that one
No,
indeed. Yeah.
it's all fiction, of course.
Yes, for poetic license, it's fiction, right? So
Yes.
we're not going to name any bits of it that may be true. 'Cause I don't want to get sued, and I don't want you to get sued either. So, no, brilliant. Okie dokie. Yeah. Obviously, then we had a birthday presents. And this I felt was a change in gear of birthday presents again, actually. So tell us about birthday presents next then.
Birthday Presents was a collection of pieces I'd written when somebody who was very dear to me had a birthday, usually a very important birthday, an even decade or 25 or something like that. I thought, well, I can get them a new sweater or something like that, but what can I give to them that maybe nobody else in their life is able to give to them? And I thought, let me write them a little piece celebrating them and celebrating their birthdays.
Oh, that's a great idea, that one. Yes, it's like it's really like I've done it with poetry in people's birthday cards before, but that's like quite an unusual way of doing it, actually, that. So
And
like
saves a lot of money too.
oh God, yeah, completely. I might have to get to do that myself, actually, with people's birthday presents. I know, listen, we'll move on that because I'll get shot up otherwise there. But yeah, you get like, we'll just talk about loosely about the first story in this one. 'Cause I did really like the first one. An amazing story, which you wrote, obviously, for your late friend's Tom Major's birthday, didn't you? And
Yes.
I love the detail of this one when you're going on about, you stated to people look at this book, he loved his leather jacket so much you felt you just had to create a story around it. So it's almost like I love this because I used to have a leather jacket myself about the same age. And it's like you're bringing the jacket to life, aren't you, really, as much as the character in the story?
And anybody who knew Tom knows that that part of it was true. He loved that leather jacket. It had like a row of little silver studs going down it, sort of meeting in a V. And that leather jacket equaled Tom.
Yeah,
And yeah, so the rest of the story is pretty well fiction.
yeah.
But
Well,
yeah,
yeah, no, I get it. It does this. I think with story writing sometimes you just need that one little nugget of information or like a trigger of some kind, and you're away with it then after that, aren't you? So
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, and that's why
Um,
like your second story on that one is like in celebration. That's what you said already. I think you've said it on the first line. 1,000 mile journey begins with a single step, and that I suspect is probably a trigger in that story as well.
yes, that was this young man, Alex, whom I'm still friends with, whose daughter, who's about to turn 2, is actually my goddaughter.
Wow.
Uh, and that's what I always tried to convey to him when he'd be too impatient that his life wasn't perfect right now. And he had a long journey to go. Um, and he's such an amazing young man. And that's what I would always say to him, Alex, look how far you've come. And 1,000 mile journey begins with a single step.
Yeah. Oh,
And
perfect.
in fact, the last time I visited him, he's in Romania. Um, he gave me this mug, and it's one of these
Yeah.
magic mugs. When you pour something hot into it, all of a sudden a photo appears.
Oh,
And it's a
wow.
photo of my gorgeous little goddaughter
Oh, that's
with
brilliant.
those words
Oh,
about a
wow.
1,000 mile journey underneath it.
Oh, wow.
So
I've seen rude version cups of that. Never anything like that. That's a nice, just a beautiful thought. Oh, that's fantastic.
it's brilliant.
That would break my heart every time I put out drinking at it would. It probably does it to you,
It
didn't
did.
know? Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
God, yeah. So now, next section of the book, obviously, this one's, I can see what you're doing with this one straight away. The way I see it. And I love the first story in this one. It's like, because the line of it is brilliant. Where a rug, a cat, a life. And again, we can see the cat, and I'm guessing you're sitting on a rug, and actually, this is your life, isn't it? And there's this had a bit more facetious nature to me, this one. And some of these stories are a bit more serious. And do you mind if I read the first paragraph out to people here to give them a feel what we're talking about with this?
No, no, no. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
I've set myself a goal. I'm writing a story about a rug, a cat, and a life. Mine, all three. It'll have to be a short one, 'cause I'm writing this at work. Work. Come on, someone give me a break. I hate this shit. And I thought it's just that is my sense of humor all around that one.
That obviously I was doing exactly that when I wrote it. This is not himself whom you saw at the beginning of this, but my 2 cats ago, my beautiful little Gracie. This was written back when I lived in New York. And I think this whole section, the way I see it, is just my saying, I'm going to mouth off about anything I want to,
Yeah, you
and
do.
you
You
can't
do.
stop.
You do. Because like you got her in the gym story as well, where you say like funny the way people react when you tell them you're a writer. More on that later. Yeah, I can relate to that. Yeah, I think it's your more facetious section in the book. I think to answer this one it was, but it was
I
great.
agree.
It was
Yeah. Yeah.
great fun indeed. It was. So I'll say then the last section. I think this was another change in gears. Was starting over. Now, what made you want to, first of all, then finish up the book with a section called Starting Over?
Because I think, as we were talking about before, how the whole book, or much of it in a way, is about seeing what's going on in your life and moving on if you need to. That's the message that I wanted to leave people with.
Yeah,
If something's not working, you can change it. You can move on. You can start over.
yeah, no, I agree. Agree with you completely with that. I think it's a great move to do, and I think we could do that as a book. Instead of saying the end, you're encouraging people to look back to the beginning of the book, or start again and look back and see the journey I've gone from the end of the book and see judge it from the beginning again as well. So, yeah, I think it's a great choice. This one it was. So, was obviously with the title story, The Day Before It Rained. I know you said
Mhm.
before this was from Provincetown, wasn't it, in the late 80s? Have you
Yes.
been back to Provincetown since the story was wrote in the late 80s?
I actually haven't.
Oh,
Uh,
right.
I think the story might have been, was it late 80s or maybe it was 90s?
Yeah, just said your
Uh,
brackets are top late 80s, so I'll trust your judgment.
yeah. Provincetown I have a couple of friends who live there, and basically it hasn't changed since then. It's a really interesting town because unlike some of the locales that are also very well known as LGBTQ resort areas, this one has always had a real melding of the husbands and wives and families from the Midwest coming out and interacting with the gay men and lesbians. And I hope this is still the case. Everybody seemed to get along just fine because Provincetown is so great and the setting is so beautiful. And it's like, I'm just not in the mood to be bigoted or nasty when confronted with such a wonderful place,
Awesome.
which is why I say if everybody just moved to California, things would be a lot better. It's so
Yeah.
beautiful here, you can't work up the energy to be negative about things.
Oh God, yeah. No, I understand you completely with that. If you come to live in Manchester where I am, mate, all we do, we get rain. We get lots of it and cold winters, but it's what you get used to. Yeah, I agree with you completely, mate, with it. Sunshine rules,
Well,
and I know it's usually quite warm most of the year in California, so that's why. So,
well, I'm up north. I'm in wine country, just north of San Francisco.
oh
And
yes.
we don't have the always beautiful, sunny, nice weather that much of Southern California does. They say that here in Sonoma County, where I live, there are four seasons, which are flood, mud, drought, and fire.
Oh God, yeah, of course.
So we're just getting past the winter rainy season. But considering where I grew up, I'll take rain over 8 inches of snow.
Yeah, well, that's what we get over there sometimes ourselves, to be honest. Yeah, it's more rain where I am. But where, for example, I've got an ex-girlfriend that lives about 2 miles away from me. She lives on top of a hill, and every winter she'll get the snow, and she does get the snow. So yeah, I know exactly what you mean with that one, mate. So now I was gonna before we wrap up on this book itself, I liked the actual last piece in the book, Things Worth Repeating. And I thought that was a really good way of saying, like, you were almost doing a coda to the rest of the book. Like, you're wrapping things up really, really nicely with that. And yeah, I love, particularly at the end of it, you tell people, be yourself, be happy, and goodbye. So, did you know this was going to be the last piece in the book pretty early on, or did it come during the natural selection?
I think I knew pretty early it would be the last piece
Yeah,
in the book because the end of the piece, as you noted, is a way to say goodbye from the book as well as goodbye from the story itself.
yeah, yeah, of course.
And if there's one little truism or message I want people to take away from the book, it's those last words you just quoted.
Yeah, I think so. It makes perfect sense. I felt it when I was reading it back yesterday, this. I thought, yeah, this has been measured, this book, on the last story completely. And it's a great way of leaving you something to think about. You said, like, you did right, I agree with you. It's when you get a book sometimes, you've let the book say goodbye to people. It's not you. it's the book. And I thought that's
Mm.
really, really clever writing. So yeah, great ending there, mate, with that one. So
That's because the book is more important than me.
yeah, same for me. Every book, every novel I've done two. The novels themselves, like each one's a reaction to the other, and that book has to have its own natural ending. Whether it's what the reader may not want, it has to be say
Right,
goodbye to yourself.
right.
Yeah, I agree. Agree with you. Great stuff indeed, mate, with that one.
Thank you.
So obviously then started to think about beyond the book now then. With you having such, I know there's an archive of stories there, and I'm presuming you're writing at the moment lots more stories. Could you envisage there being a second book, maybe someday?
Well, I'm looking at a couple of other sort of archival projects that I never really got around to doing anything with. And the one that's interesting me the most is this murder mystery
Oh yeah, that's
set
different.
in, yeah. I love reading mysteries, and this one is set in a theater box office, the ticket office, which is a day job I did for years. And there are so many hilarious stories to tell
Ah,
from the box office. And of course, when the person gets murdered, sitting in a certain seat, it's the person who runs the box office who knows when did I sell her that seat, who was supposed to be in the seat but canceled and now she's in it. And it's a lot of fun. It's actually, if you remember the story in the collection called Ballo and Maschera, that sort of can't be murder mystery that takes place in Venice, it's the same main character.
ah, right. Yeah, I understand now. Yeah, because I'm always a believer. And nothing is I'm moaning a bit today, but is and I think I can relate to you with this. Is any book you do, it's got to have something of yourself in it. And that's why you're changing genres. You're talking about your own background, what you've worked in and what you know. And I think you can really make stories around that sometimes.
Well, I don't know. I guess people do it, but I don't know how you can write a story that doesn't have something of yourself in it.
Yeah,
That's
I
where
think,
I get my information is what I see and what I experience.
yeah, the same. Now, I'll tell you about my next book off camera because
Sure.
I can't really reveal
Okay.
it yet. So, but yeah,
Okay.
I understand you completely that. No, good luck with it. So, keep us informed of that one straight away. So, I'd certainly like to read it and I'd love to have you on again, certainly in a future episode, certainly with that.
Oh,
Now,
great.
okay, social media wise, then, I'll wrap it up now. Obviously, where can people track you down if you wish to ask you some questions about your book?
Well, the best place is on my website, which is www.richrubinwriter.com.
Perfect. That's
That's
fine.
Rich, Rubin and writer, Writer. There's a get in touch section on there.
Perfect. Yes, people drop this message because I've really enjoyed this chat today, and I found you've been a fascinating gentleman to chat to. So yes, definitely give you a nudge. If you get hundreds of emails now, I do apologise, Rich, for this.
I will live with it. It's better than the alternative, which is getting none.
Okay, seriously, where can people get hold of your book to wrap up with?
Um, I would suggest they go to the website and click on the main page. There's a link to the Amazon page. Now, that might be US Amazon. So if you're using Amazon UK, just feed in my name and the name of the book, and it should pop up.
Yeah, and same goes obviously if you're any other country like France, China, Australia, wherever. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, I agree with you completely. Well, thank you for that today, Rich. Now, obviously, people are
Sure.
wondering, we have not wrapped up at any stretch of four yet. So Rich is going to read out a few examples just in the second half and the TikTok special. But I've really enjoyed this today, Rich. Thank you for today. It's been a pleasure, mate, this one. Definitely not anything else. So, all right, people, we will see you all in two shakes of the dice.